I appreciate videos about fuel, videos about taxes, and videos about the economy are pretty boring. Videos about election promises can get heated, and this video is about all of those things, so do your best to stay with me. I'll do my best to be as succinct as possible. Peter Dutton's made an election promise to halve the tax we pay in Australia, or the fuel excise. He's made an election promise to halve it for 12 months, and to then review it at that point. And so I want to talk about what the fuel excise is, like comparatively to a global market. And then I want to talk to you about the underhanded, we'll reduce it for 12 months, then review, and what that generally means from a Liberal Party perspective. Like, if we're being perfectly frank, I don't believe Peter Dutton, and I think that it's a temporary decrease in cost so that he can increase it in 12 months' time, like Scott Morrison did in 2022 before the last election. But that's not what this video is about. Like, I'm not saying you should trust Peter Dutton or distrust Peter Dutton. I'm saying let's look at the numbers, right? Let's save him some time. He doesn't have to do the review in 12 months' time. I'll do it for him now, okay? I've crunched the numbers, I've got them here, right? I'll put a friendly little graph up for you there if I can be bothered making it. But Australia, generally speaking, as far as tax goes on fuel, we're in the middle of the range. We don't pay as high tax as they do in the Scandinavian countries, but they pay a very high tax rate because they're like lefties, greenies, and like it's an environmental policy. Sort of the same reason we pay a shitload in taxes on cigarettes, you know? Like, they're trying to prove a moral point. And the Scandinavian countries pay a shitload more tax on their fuel than Australia does. However, Australians do pay far more for their fuel, or taxes. They pay far more in tax for their fuel than North American countries do, right? And a cynic could say, yeah, that's because we haven't invaded any Middle Eastern countries and stolen a bunch of their oil, right? But we're not going there. We're not going there, okay? So as I said, here's that graph. It's probably been there the whole time for you, right? But Australia is sitting rough and ready right where that red line is, yeah? Which is basically in the middle. Basically in the middle, as you can see, maybe a little bit lower than the middle. So we're not paying as much in tax on fuel as it might seem when you look at it within a global perspective, right? We are run-of-the-mill in the middle. There's room that it could be higher, there's room that it could be lower. So there we go, there's an easy review done. We don't have to wait 12 months, we can see that they're mid-range, right? And so my question and my thought process is, with all of that information so readily available, given that Scott Morrison did the exact same thing, halved the fuel excise and then quietly let it go back to being how it was, and, you know, I am quite certain if he'd won the election, he would have increased it. Given that people like Tony Abbott say, you know, before the election campaign in 2010 or 13, whichever one it was, like saying no cuts to the ABC, and then there were cuts to the ABC once he got in. Given that it's the same party as John Howard saying that, no, our party would never introduce a GST in 1995 and then swiftly introducing it in 1996. Like, you just can't trust the Liberals when it comes to tax cuts. In my opinion, I don't trust them. Sorry, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying you can or can't do anything. I don't trust the Liberal Party when it comes to tax cuts, because they would do it if they wanted to. There is no need to wait 12 months to review the fuel tax. You can do it in a second, asking ChatGPT. You can do it in a second if you have some government boffins in the fucking state treasury and all that. Like, you don't need that long. And the only reason you kick the can down the road that long is you hope people forget, and then you increase the rate. Like, that is the politicking. That is the politics of it. And I don't want people to fall for, that's a cost of living measure. That'll really drastically reduce the cost of living. Because it will for a year or so, and then it won't again, you know? Like, a far more effective and much, much easier way to reduce the cost of living here in Australia would be to take the tax off tampons. Like, and I'll pause you there, right? Because it's not a luxury tax or whatever. There's no such thing as a luxury tax anymore. Back to the Howard thing I was just talking about, right? So Howard spun the GST as like he was eliminating a bunch of taxes, like the wholesale goods tax and the luxury tax and the blah, 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 and introducing the GST. But what it meant was regular people like Povo fucking whatevers, you know, like the working class and middle class, instead of paying 2 or 3% on their groceries in tax, they're now paying 10%. And all the cunts that would have bought yachts and limousines and fucking their 4th or 5th investment property and whatnot, instead of paying 15, 25, 30% in tax, those motherfuckers are only paying 10 as well, but with the GST. So it's like, the twisting of things and the way that the Liberal Party traditionally lie to people like me and people like us, because I presume you're not some rich person watching this video, you know what I mean? The way that they have historically and consistently lied about this sort of a policy, it has all the hallmarks, it has all the patterns of, yep, they're going to review it for 12 months. It will be 20 cents a litre cheaper. That is a definite help to the cost of living and to the inflationary crisis or whatever. But inflation's going down, interest rates are down, like, relief is coming. We don't need to sell our soul to the devil. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to make a video about that. If he was serious about saving money with fuel, it would be a permanent change. It would not be a 12-month change and then review, you know? Like, we've got all the fucking numbers. We've got all the statistics. We don't need to review it in 12 months' time. The only reason to review it after reducing the price for 12 months is because he wants to go, all right, well, what are we not spending money on that we could have been if we earned it from here, and see if it's that bad. Can we actually afford to give them this discount? And the answer is always no with the Liberal Party, because they're horrible economic managers, despite what they would tell you. Anyway, here's that graph again, in case you were interested, right? Australia, comparatively to our nearest cohort in terms of being taxed on fuel, okay? So those are the numbers. Don't let anyone lie to you. Look at the numbers. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, we're the highest in the world, or, oh, we're the lowest in the world, or either of those things. We're about mid-range, and you can look at the numbers yourself. Don't listen to a flapping mouth talking head like me. If you're not interested, if you are interested, and you're not confused by the nitty-gritty numbers of it, look into it yourself. You're more trustworthy than any stranger, right? You can teach yourself these things. You don't need someone with an ulterior motive. And I do have an ulterior motive, right? Like, I'm not trying to pretend I don't. I want what's best for me and my kids and collectively the working class. And in my opinion, Peter Dutton is certainly not that, you know? Like, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and this will go in my Culture Wars playlist, so I'm not afraid to actually tell you what I think, right? But I was driving along the street the other day and somebody flashed their lights at me to warn that there was a cop up the road. It's a very iconically Australian thing that we do, right? Flash your lights, warn about the cop. It's us against them. Fuck them. They're going to try and nab you on the road. You know what I mean? Like, it's us against them. And you're flashing your lights to warn people, okay? So, if I remember in the edit, Peter Dutton's a fucking cop, man. He's an ex-cop. Do we really want the country to be run by an ex-cop? Like, before we wrap up the video, I'll come back to that pads and tampons point, right? All it takes is the stroke of a pen. The health minister could make it happen today, and she hasn't, right? So both major parties, all major parties, are failing the Australian public by not making it happen. Think of the easing of the cost of living. Like, you'd have to think, and this is just waxing philosophical, I haven't actually crunched the numbers on this one, but you'd have to think at least 30% of the population are buying pads or tampons. You know what I mean? Because, like, on face value, you go 50%, all women, right? But some women have gone through menopause, and some women aren't yet having their periods, and some women, you know, have medical issues, or, like, have that non-pregnancy thing that stops them having their period and whatnot. Like, not every woman has their period. So we'll give it 30% of the population, not 50. But they are faced with the GST. Every time they pay for pads or tampons, they're paying GST because they haven't been exempt from the GST, and they could be exempt from the GST, pads and tampons this is, not women in general, but pads and tampons could be removed from the goods and services tax with the stroke of a pen. All it would take is the health minister to say these are an essential medical item, these are essential medical services, and women wouldn't have to pay the GST tax that they currently have to pay on pads and tampons, which is colloquially referred to as a luxury tax on pads and tampons, but the luxury tax doesn't exist anymore. The luxury tax was a good thing. It meant that people buying luxuries were taxed at a high rate, and John Howard got rid of it because he's a fucking cunt. But, long story short, just think about the money that's still in women's pockets. Like, they're buying pads or tampons every single month. If it costs $5 or $6 less per package, that's money in their pockets that they can spend on other things, which reduces inflation. It doesn't matter if they're, like, if you're a man and you're like, oh, well, I want some cost of living relief, you'll get it. Because the person Like, the women in your life won't be spending money on pads and tampons. Like, it adds up. It all adds up, and it's like 30% of the population, just going off the top of my head, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to fuck with the fuel excise at all. You could just take the GST off pads and tampons and let women actually pay the cost rate for them. You know, fuck, we could give them away for free, you know, but that's getting a bit too communist for most viewers on YouTube, you know, giving pads and tampons away for free. What is this? But, you know, like, if libraries didn't already exist, if libraries weren't already a thing, and someone suggested we invent them, like, the main argument would be, oh, who's paying for that? You lefties just want everyone to get everything. Like, fucking ridiculous, you know what I mean? But anyway, this is another video. This is another sideways video. If it's the first one you've watched from me, poke around my channel. I've got a bunch of cool shit. I do a bunch of Australian history. I want my political opinions now to be known. I'm going to be talking about a lot more about politics, just in case I die within the next decade. So I want my kids to be able to look back on, watch this and see what type of person I was. Even if they don't like me, at least they know who I am. You know what I mean? So these guys are my patrons. I like money, or financial supporters. I like money. If you see their name or logo or whatever, they've given me some money, please consider giving me some money yourself. You know what I mean? I'm a starving artist / delivery guy, food delivery guy. This is what we do. I'm a single dad to 2 special needs kids. Help me out, and I will put your name there. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you when I look at you. You'll see me when you look at me. Thanks so much for watching.